All right, let's talk about all this with one of the most closely listened to Fed watchers in the world. That is David Zervos. He is chief market strategist at Jefferies. He is a CNBC contributor. He is currently in Washington, D.C. He's somebody who knows Jerome Powell personally. And, David, you and I can agree. I've been very vocal. I think the Fed screwed up. I think they kept rates way too low for too long. But that's irrelevant to this. I mean, what do you make about the DOJ's action against Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve?
Well, first of all, Brian, I'm not a legal expert. I look at the building works, and I am a little shocked at what was spent. It seems a little crazy. I'm not sure if there's a criminal investigation to be had out of it. That'll be up to the lawyers and the DOJ. But, excuse me, if you look at the numbers, it is really an egregious amount of spending. So I guess we should learn about it as taxpayers. We'd like to know about it. And, I think it makes some sense to dig a little bit more. But a criminal investigation into the head of the Fed at this point with this much sort of antagonism between the Fed and the administration is just probably not healthy. And it's not healthy when the president's looking to get his candidates confirmed through the Senate. I think that's the breaking news that you put there, which is that they're going to slow this process of adding a new Fed chair, adding a new governor, and what happens to the makeup of the committee as we go into May. It also may change Chair Powell's decisions on when he decides to leave if he feels like the institution is being threatened. So I think there's a lot of moving parts here. Yeah. The good news is, Brian, the markets really didn't care too much.
Yeah, it was kind of funny they didn't, David. Why do you think that is? I mean, last night when the news came out and Jerome Powell putting out a very rare, I would say, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before outside of maybe the subprime crisis where the Fed had to be sort of 24/7 putting out that statement. Markets are down, indexes are down, futures were down. We came back. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, we weren't down that much. We were down maybe 0.5%.
I know, but it wasn't
a big move, but it was down.
The thesis, right?
The thesis was, okay, credibility, okay, is independence on the rocks or on the ropes again? I think the markets just kind of become immune to this. I think they look at a lot of this as more theater than actual substance. They see this as ways to kind of push an agenda, and they probably think that this is not one of the most popular decisions that all the folks inside of the White House, the cabinet, and on the Republican side are that excited about. So its odds of really sticking and creating a major problem are probably pretty low. And the market is a discounting. You know this better than anyone, right? The markets just discount things. And I think what they're doing is discounting this a lot. And that's probably the right thing to do. So I don't feel the market made a mistake in all of that. And I think it'll be in the background. It'll probably go away sooner than you think. That's my guess.
But yeah, that was kind of my point to Emily, David, not to interrupt, was kind of like, is this possible? There's a lot of sort of investigation and a lot of people going on TV and sort of slamming fists about it, and then it just kind of fades away. I mean, let's not forget that in the 1960s or early 70s, it would have been the 60s, Lyndon Johnson, then President LBJ, physically pushed then Fed Chair William McChesney Martin while screaming, I think, F-bombs at the guy. This idea of Fed independence is there. But let's be clear, presidents have done varying levels of aggression with the Fed throughout history, have they not? It's not pretty.
Absolutely right. I think that took place at his ranch in Texas, and he was upset that he had, boys dying in Vietnam and that he didn't have the support of the Fed in funding that war. So, look, this goes way back. I think we can all agree that the Fed as an institution has questionable independence on both sides, whether there was political maneuvering that was working against the administration or whether the administration is actually trying to get political jockeying to move in its favor. That's just the nature of Washington, Brian. That's what we live in. We live in a city here, or we live in a country with a city here that is about politics. And the Fed sits in this city, and it has political biases. And I think maybe this administration is trying to exercise some of those ones that it sees against it and put in ones that it would like for it. But you're never going to get rid of them.